if you have some kind of head trauma, some kind of intracranial hematoma, what are we talking about?
So what we're really talking about is a kinetic energy applied to the cranium. And when you think of a lump of jelly, and around the jelly is this very, very rigid and durable structure, which is the skull. And if you had to just shake it, you're going to damage that jelly. But in the brain, there are 5 different structures that can get damaged from an external blow to the head or external force to the head, whether it's rotational or direct smack on the head with acceleration, deceleration. We could go through those mechanisms and how those structures impact the brain.
Okay, now when you say acceleration, deceleration, this can happen in a car accident, right?
Yes.
Where somebody rapidly decelerates and so their head is snapped forward and back. So maybe the head doesn't actually hit anything, but it snaps forward and back really fast.
Now, usually one part of the head will hit something, so that you'll have either the back or the front hitting something solid and immovable.
Even if it's the back headrest or...
Yeah, it could even be the headrest, and that would be the primary, the coup injury. And the contra coup is when the head snaps in the opposite direction, and the brain doesn't move as fast as the skull, and therefore the brain smacks into the skull in the opposite region. So you have the direct area of direct trauma, and then the other area where you don't have a fracture. So you'll have a fracture where there's a bruise over the area of the brain that got the direct trauma, and then only an internal injury on the contra coup side.
Okay, now people in the lay world talk about talk and die. Natasha Richardson, Liam Neeson's wife, was skiing a number of years ago. The truth is, you might develop signs and symptoms of an intracranial hematoma right after an injury to your head, or they may take weeks or longer to appear because there could be a slow bleed that is building up pressure inside the brain cavity, correct?
That's right. And in fact, 2 of those structures, remember I said there are 5 structures inside the brain that can kill you if there's an injury. So in the case of somebody like Natasha Richardson, where she had I think it was a linear fracture, but didn't get it treated that night, but the pressure develops over hours. So the patient can get an initial injury, think they're okay, and then when they go to sleep that night, they could actually not wake up because the blood has accumulated and caused a herniation or a pressure such that the brain herniates under the membranes that are rigid and switches off the brain function.
So with the passage of time, if there's a bleed, they might start experiencing increasing headaches, vomiting. There could be drowsiness or progressive loss of consciousness. They could get dizzy or start getting confused, but not realize that they're confused because they don't have the objectivity to know it. That's why it's good to have somebody watch you that is objective, because you might have unequal pupil size, you might have slurred speech, and if somebody's watching you, they can check your eyes and go, wow, one of your pupils is much larger than the other. You're starting to slur your speech and you're not making a lot of sense.
Yeah, it's quite dangerous when you get a significant blow to the head. You might not be unconscious, just slight loss of orientation, and not realize that you've actually developed a tear in the artery in the epidural space, and then that goes on to cause a catastrophic bleed, even though the patient feels they're not super sick. They may be a bit nauseous. They may, as you said, be a little disoriented. So those are the signs not to ignore if you get a blow to your head, because it's totally treatable. Yeah. With a CT scan, you have to get an immediate CT scan, neurological examination, and if there's blood in that extradural compartments between the cranium and the brain, it's a very easy to detect thing on a non-contrast head CT scan.
Yeah, there's not a lot of space in there.
No space. Well, the brain is forgiving to some extent, but because the cranium is not forgiving, if you build up any swelling from one of three things, either when the brain is receives a blow, it can swell. That swelling itself puts pressure in other parts, or if a vessel is broken and you bleed, you're now increasing the volume of tissue that doesn't allow the brain to function because it's now putting pressure on other areas. So anything that causes swelling of the brain or increased hemorrhage into the brain can lead to that catastrophic event with herniation and death.